I got stopped by the Tokyo police on my way to work. Now, was I breaking the law? Gray area. You know, gray like the Batmobile. But they stopped me. Now, this was not like any police stop I've ever experienced. So it was 2 motorcycle police and 3 cops in a van. The reason they stopped me is for filtering near a turn signal. Filtering is, again, gray area legal in Japan, but there's certain spots where it's not so legal. So here's essentially what happened. First, they started talking to me about all my paperwork and then realized, looking at me, to ask, do I speak Japanese? I said yes. They were very friendly and polite and carried on in Japanese. No weird broken English to complicate everything. Then they asked, did I go to driving school in Japan and do I know all the driving rules in Japan? I said no, because I'm sure there's rules I don't know, and I did not go to driving school, which is not required for immigrants. Some don't even need to take any education whatsoever. So what they did was they explained the rules. Now here's what happened. I was on a road that had 2 lanes on one side, 2 lanes on the other side, and then another lane in the middle for turning. The turn lane to go right, because Japanese drive on the left, was stopped because they had a red arrow. So what I did was I filtered to the front of that line and got in front. I then took the turn when the arrow turned green, and I heard the police sirens. I did not notice the police when I was coming up. That's how that is. Now what they explained to me was, when there is a straight lane and a turn lane, if the turn lane is red and the straight lane is going, you cannot filter between the two to get to the front. What they also explained is, in Japan, when you approach a traffic light, there is sometimes a solid yellow line separating lanes going in the same direction to say you cannot cross or filter on this line. The other thing they explained was, when you filter, you have to be alongside the vehicles. You can't actually cut back into traffic and get in front of the vehicles, even though you're on a bike, even though you're much faster. After they explained all these rules and they took my information, they said there is no ticket, there's only a warning. There was one officer with a notepad handwriting things down. I got no documentation, no written anything. But because I am an immigrant, they do need to check by law that I have a valid residency card, or Zayu card in Japanese, and they needed to check that I have a valid Japanese driver's license. But through the whole experience, they were very friendly, very calm, talked to me like a dad would talk to his kids, and everyone was very polite. Then the 3 van police got back in their van, and the motorcycle police talked to me about my motorcycle because they thought it was very cool, especially the custom piece on the front. They knew the Tracer, but they've never seen one like this, and they just kept joking that it looks like a Gundam, and it was just very cool to them. But all said and done, the whole experience was about 4.5 minutes, and they sent me on my way because they did not want me to be late to work. All in all, they were very nice, very friendly, very helpful, and there was no reason to be nervous or scared. Why I say that is because some of my viewers are not from North America. But in the USA, whenever the police stop you, and this is true of everyone I know, you always get nervous, you always get scared. Because serve and protect does not feel like what's happening when you get stopped, especially when you don't know why you're getting stopped, which has happened to me multiple times. I will say, in the USA, most of the time, the police have been very friendly, very nice, and absolutely wonderful. I'm sure someone in the comments will say because you're a straight white man. But in Japan, 100% of my experiences with the police have been absolutely lovely. But as a little healthy tip, in Japan, police cannot give you a ticket unless they personally saw you commit the crime. If there's a report of you driving sporadically, that is not something they can ticket you for. What they can do is stop you and warn you, and they tend to keep a record of those warnings. If you get a lot of warnings, then they will flag your license plate to make sure police are looking for you, including the hidden police. As an example, even if a police officer sees you, the ticketing officer has to be the one that saw you commit a crime. Someone I know was in a car with their parents. In the back seat of the car, adults do not need a seatbelt. But when you're on the major highway, i.e. the Kosokudor, you do need a seatbelt. So this person does not like wearing their seatbelt in the back, and when they went through the toll booth, they still didn't have their seatbelt, but there was a hidden police checkpoint, and the officer checking saw that they did not have their seatbelt. So that person got pulled over, and the next officer checked. But while they were pulling over, the person in the back quickly put on their seatbelt. The checking officer came up to the driver's side and said, "I was told one of you don't have a seatbelt." And the driver said, "Does everyone have a seatbelt?" Everyone said yes. And then the officer looked at everyone had a seatbelt, and the officer could only give a verbal warning of, "Okay, well, just so you know, here's the rules and here's why these rules exist, but you're free to go, drive safe." And all in all, that's really it. Very quick, very simple, very straightforward. I will say, just as a note against the Japanese police, I have heard stories of racial profiling from the police, and I've had some questionable things about my bicycle when I was in Osaka, whether or not it was mine, where I got it, how much I paid, but it was in a place where they were taking a lot of bikes that were illegally parked. So I don't know if it's because I was foreign or not, but I have heard stories from people who have been stopped and questioned based on their race. Sometimes it was black people with other white and Asian people, and only the black people were questioned. Sometimes it was white people with Asian people, only the white people were questioned. And sometimes it was because they had an accent and the police weren't sure about that, so they wanted to see their visas. The other thing is, in Japan, they have a very low crime rate. Part of that, and a big part, is they do not arrest anyone until they're already sure absolutely that they are guilty. That's why Japan has a roughly 99% conviction rate. All the people they're not completely sure that they can convict, they do not arrest in the first place. So there's no failure to convict. So as long as they don't have absolute proof of a crime, you really don't have a risk of getting in trouble with the police. That being said, they set up a lot of things around money laundering and making sure you paid your tax. It's very forgiving if you make a mistake. It's not forgiving at all if you're really avoiding it. So if you have illegally gotten gains, it is extremely difficult to use them in Japan, which is why Yakuza participation rates have dropped dramatically in Japan, faster than that of organized crime in almost any country over the last 30 or 40 years. But that's it for this video's rambling. Till next time, this has been Kairyu Rider reminding you to ride safe, try not to break the laws, and remember, the police are usually here to help.